Okay, students, we're going to continue working on our curve piece. If you remember, the overall length of our curve piece is 17 and the overall width is 10. We're making our curve piece out of some bleacher board, and it's easy for us to achieve 17 inches in length, but our pre-cut bleacher board does not make 10 inches in width. So if you have a board that you may need to make wider, the solution is to glue it. Now there's going to be a problem associated with gluing the two pieces that you cross-cut because the edges have already been shaped. So what we're going to need to do is rip those edges off. And we will do that on the table saw. Let's go there now. Okay, here is our table saw. It is a SawStop table saw like the one you saw in the video. It does have two power switches down below. It has the main power switch that cuts power from the machine, and you know that that one is on when there's a solid green light. If the green light is flashing, or if there's a flashing red light or solid red light, there is some type of fault that needs to be taken care of. Here's the main switch to start the motor. Pull it out to turn it on, and push it in to turn it off. Let me get this piece of scrap out of there that someone left behind. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is check our blade height. So I'm going to take one of our pieces of stock and I'm going to set it up against the blade. We want to make sure that the blade height is 1/2 above the material being cut. This is a little high, so I'm going to adjust it with the blade elevation wheel. That looks better. By lowering the blade so that only 1/2 is above the material being cut, you'll get a smoother cut, the machine will not have to work as hard, and it's much safer. We're going to make a couple of passes. We're going to make one pass at 7.5 to take off one of the rounded edges, and then we'll do another pass at 7 to take off the other edge. We're going to set our measurement by adjusting this gauge. Sometimes when I tell students that they need to go rip a measurement on the table saw, they will go and mark out that cut on their board when all they need to do is set the gauge. Here I'm setting the gauge for the fence at 7.5. I could check that with my tape measure. This is a good practice if you've never used the machine before, just to make sure that the fence gauge is accurate. Now, the safety margin for the table saw is 4 inches. 4 inches is how physically close I can get to the blade without being in danger. Since I'm ripping a rather wide stock, I should be able to push it through with my hand. But if I couldn't push it through and still observe my 4-inch safety margin, I may need a push stick to keep my hands safe. When I'm getting ready to cut, I want to make sure that I'm standing off to the left. I do not want to be directly in the path of the blade and the board when I'm cutting, in case there is kickback. Let's go ahead and make our first passes. All the way through. Now I'm going to set the gauge to 7. Take my scraps and put them in the barrel. I want to make sure that my fresh cut edge goes up against the fence. Before you turn the saw on, make sure your stock's not touching the blade yet. Don't grab that scrap until the blade stops. Now, as we said before, we need a 10-inch piece. We have two 7-inch pieces right now. To make these wide enough, we're going to need to glue them together. So let's go to the glue table right now. This is not the glue table. These are not the glue table either. That means don't glue on these tables. Here is our glue table. Here is the light. Here are the clamps we're going to need. We'll need 2 of them for this operation. If you want to run out of room on the glue table, you can glue on the floor. First, I'm going to set up the clamps for my boards. If I'm working on the glue table, I want the handles to hang over the edge, and I want to make sure that I've adjusted the upper jaws so that they are open. I don't want to run out of threads when I go to tighten the board. I'm going to set my boards inside the clamp. One of these I need to adjust closer. By squeezing the spring, I can move that up a little bit. I'll do it on each side. I need to check my end grain. I don't want these lines to run parallel. Right now, this line's running in this direction, and this is going in the other direction. If my lines were running parallel in the same direction on the joint that I'm gluing together, my board would be weak and it might split. I'm going to practice snugging up the clamps before I apply glue. I want to make sure they grab, but I don't want to over tighten it. If I over tighten my project after I glue it, I will squeeze all the glue out. Now I'll start by gluing one edge at a time. Here is our glue bottle. You don't want to apply too much or you'll have a lot to clean up. You want just enough to completely coat the edge, but not much more than that. I'm just using my finger. If you remember from the candy dispenser in the 7th grade, all you have to do to get that glue off your finger is rub them together and it dries off. I have a little excess, so I'm going to try and take as much on my finger as I can and start applying it on the next piece. You want to completely coat both edges. I'm going to need a little more. Just enough to completely coat the edge, and not much more than that. Now you see I'm going to need to clean off a little bit of that. Let me snug this up first. Make sure your ends stay even and your boards stay flat. Snug it up good, but not too tight, or you'll squeeze all the glue out. I can go get a damp paper towel to clean off the excess. I'll do that over here at the sink. I can go ahead and rinse my hand off a little bit while I'm at it. Just a couple squares should be enough, and just damp, not sopping wet. So I don't want to be dripping water everywhere, or that would be way too wet. If it's way too wet, all you're going to do is smear that glue around. You want to wipe it off, not smear it around. See how quickly I did that? Now you'll notice at this point, I can pick up my project. So I might carefully pick it up and slide it out of the way somewhere. For now, I'm gonna slide it under the table. In about a half an hour or so, I could come back here, unclamp it, put the clamps away, and let my board set up overnight. Good luck with this step of the project.